Once upon a time, a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel lived in a hut in the woods with their father, a poor woodcutter. Their mother had died when the children were very young, and after a few years, the father remarried. The new stepmother made life very hard for the children. Hansel and Gretel were not allowed to eat until after their stepmother had eaten everything she wanted off the plates. Most of the time, only scraps were left. Each day, the children had to work long and hard to finish their chores. Hansel and Gretel tried to tell their father about their sad situation, but he would hear none of it. It seemed that the only one he listened to was his wife. All the stepmother talked about was how much trouble it was to have children in the hut, and how she wished they would go away forever. Each day there was less and less food for the boy and the girl to eat, yet the stepmother gave them more hard work to do. One day Gretel begged her father, "Please, father, we worked all day long and we're hungry." But the stepmother slapped her face. "You ungrateful brats," she yelled. "You eat us out of a house and home." That night the two children were not allowed to sleep in the hut at all. Instead, they had to sleep outside in the cold. They shivered and tried to keep each other warm as best as they could. Winter was coming, and the clothes they wore were so thin it felt as if they had no clothes at all. The next morning, when the sun rose, Gretel turned to her little brother. "Hansel," she said, "we cannot stay here anymore. We must escape today. There has to be more to eat in the woods than what they give us at home." "What if we get lost in the woods?" said Hansel. "How could we come back?" "I will take bread with us," said Gretel, "and leave a trail of breadcrumbs behind us. If we have to come back, all we need to do is follow the crumbs back home." And so the two of them escaped from the house into the woods and left their hard life behind. They went deeper and deeper into the woods. Gretel was careful to drop one crumb behind her and then another, just as she said she would. Alas, they looked for anything to eat: an apple tree, pear trees, some nuts in the ground, even dried up berries. There was nothing to be found. The trees and the bushes were all past the time they bore fruit. The poor children were hungrier than ever. At last, poor Hansel and Gretel knew if they did not return to their hut, they would simply starve. All they needed to do was to follow the breadcrumbs that would lead them home. Yet when they looked for the trail of breadcrumbs, there was nothing to be found. The breadcrumbs were gone. A bird whooshed up into the air, and in its beak was a large breadcrumb. Hansel and Gretel were struck with grief. The birds must have swooped down and stolen away all the breadcrumbs. A wolf howled in the distance. The sun was settling. Hansel and Gretel were lost and hungry. Now they were scared too. "Gretel," whispered Hansel in fear, "what will we do?" She did not know what to say. All she could do was to hug her little brother. Every minute it was getting darker and darker. A wolf howled in the distance again. All of a sudden, Gretel saw a small light shining far away. It must mean someone was living here, deep in the woods. "Look," cried Gretel, "I bet whoever lives here will be kind and will take us in." The two children sped as fast as they could to the light in the distance. When they got closer, they were amazed by what they saw. If you can imagine this from top to bottom, this hut was made entirely of candy, covered with white frosting and red licorice bricks, and decorated by candy all around the doorway and its gingerbread roof. What a sight it was to see. Before Gretel could say, "I bet it will be okay if we just have a little taste," both of them were nibbling bits and then chunks of frosting and candy. "Who is nibbling on my house?" a sharp voice called out. Hansel and Gretel spun around. A green old witch stared at them, frowning, stunned. Gretel could only curtsy. "If you please, ma'am," she said, as sweetly as she could. "There was so much candy on your house, and we're so hungry." "You got that right. It's my house," snapped the witch. Her voice dropped. "Well then," she said in a gentler voice, "come inside. I'll get something for you to eat." Hansel and Gretel looked at each other. It looked like this was going to work out fine after all. With a burst of glee, they skipped into the witch's hut. The witch gave them a fine meal of soup and bread. As they licked and swallowed the last crust of bread, they looked around. And what the brother and sister saw made their hearts turn cold. Piles of bones in the corners. Yet the two children were very tired, so tired that they tried not to think about any of this. Instead, they quickly fell asleep. When he awoke the next morning, Hansel found himself locked in a cage. The witch roared to Gretel, "Your brother will stay there from now on. Every day I will fatten him up until he is ready to make me a fine dinner." She laughed, rubbing her hands with glee. "And you," she turned and looked sharply at Gretel, "you will do as I say." Gretel worked all day doing chores for the witch, and Hansel was well fed, just as the witch said. Each morning the witch said to the boy, "Show me your finger. I will feel how plump you are getting." For the old witch could not see very well. Hansel held out his finger. The witch smiled when she felt how plump he was getting. "Gretel," Hansel whispered to his sister in fear, "what do we do? Soon I will be plump enough. Who knows? Any day now the witch may want to eat me." His sister wished she had a plan, but could not think of anything she could do. One night, when the witch was sleeping, Gretel had an idea. She picked up a bone from one of the piles on the floor and woke her brother. "Hansel," she said, "the next time the witch asks to see your finger, hold out this bone to her instead." The next morning, he did just that. Said the witch, touching the bone and thinking it was the boy's finger. "This is going to take longer than I thought." "At least I have more time," Gretel thought. But still, she could not think of any way they could both escape. Each morning when the witch said, "Show me your finger," Hansel held out the thin bone. One day the witch yelled, "I will not wait another day. This boy will be my dinner tonight, no matter how skinny he is." The witch ordered Gretel to start the fire in the oven at once. Gretel worked as slowly as she could. Why was the witch looking at her with such a sly smile? "Be a dear," said the witch, with a slow grin. "Go inside the oven, won't you? Tell me if it's hot enough." Gretel's heart skipped a beat. If she did that, the witch would push her inside, and she would eat them both. But that gave her an idea. Gretel looked down. "I am not sure how to tell if the fire is hot enough." "Nonsense," said the witch. "Nothing could be easier. Just go in." Said Gretel slowly. "Please show me first." "Stupid girl," snapped the witch. Mumbling and grumbling, she stepped inside of the oven. The moment the witch was inside, Gretel quickly slammed the door. "Gretel," Hansel cried out, "you saved us." The sister tried to think fast. "Where's that key to your cage?" She looked and looked. At last she found it, below a large, heavy vase. She freed her brother from the cage. How they hugged and laughed. Then she went back to the vase. Why would it be so heavy? And that is when she found out why. The vase was filled with precious jewels, their pockets filled with jewels. Hansel and Gretel ran out of the witch's hut as fast as they could. They soon found a small path and followed it. The small path led to a wider path, and the wider path led to a road. They waited by the roadside, hoping someone would ride by. When a horseman trotted up, Hansel and Gretel waved their hands. When he stopped, the children offered one of the small jewels. The horseman was happy to give them a ride home. When the brother and sister opened the door to their home, their father was wild with joy to see them. He was worried night and day since they left. What's more, their stepmother had died very soon after they left, and so Hansel and Gretel could live happily with their father again. The three of them lived in joy for many years to come. The end.